Hi, this is Ben with Novolux Stereophonic, and here in front of us today I have a very cool piece of stereo equipment. This is a Kenwood Model 650 Supreme. It was produced between 1977 to 79, 130 watts per channel into 8 ohms, 5 hertz to 50 kilohertz frequency response, all direct coupled from front to back, so there's no coupling capacitors in between the stages. And the front end is all comprised of FETs, so there's no bipolar junction transistors in the preamp at all. This is from a series that included the Model 500, the Model 600, and this one, the 650. The only difference between a 600 and a 650 is the faceplate, which we'll go into more detail on a little bit later. In order to understand where the Kenwood 650 fits into the Kenwood brand, we need to investigate some company history in the Supreme series a little bit. Now, I don't claim to be an expert on this. I'm going to do my best to paraphrase some of the information that I've found from lurking on Audio Karma, looking at some company history and brochures and stuff like that, but I'm sure I have an incomplete picture. So if I get anything wrong, please correct me in the comments below, and if there's any good resources out there, that would be awesome if you guys would post that as well. Once in a while when you're on the used market looking for Kenwood product, you'll find exactly what you're looking for, but instead of saying Kenwood on the front, it'll say Trio, and it'll have the same exact logo. Trio and Kenwood are actually the same company. My understanding is that Trio was founded in Japan and they wanted to export equipment to the United States. So what they did is they founded Kenwood Electronics Inc. in 1963 and started importing Trio product under the Kenwood name for the US market. They were doing some really cool stuff with engineering some direct coupled circuits, dual mono, power supply topology, and that stuff was really successful and was going well for a while. In 1972, Jiro Kasuga, one of the co-founders of Trio, decided to kind of branch off and start his own project, Kensonic, which eventually became Accuphase. Now this happens a lot in the audio industry. Very talented engineers will be upset with the way that the leadership is marketing specific products or cutting corners on their high-end designs, and they'll kind of branch off and do their own thing to fulfill their dream of the high-end equipment. But what's a little bit confusing here is I think Trio and Kensonic shared some engineering talent and possibly were financially linked. And it's rumored that the engineers that eventually designed some of the really great early Accuphase products were actually working on a series for Kenwood called the Supreme series. This consisted of the 700C preamp, 700M power amp, and 700T tuner. These are very beautiful pieces of audio electronics. They have very similar styling to these. And I guess what they were doing with the 500, 600, and 650, which is this series here, was making some export models. So the 500 is rated at 100 watts per channel, and the 600 is 130 watts per channel, and the 650 is just a faceplate variation. What I found in the manual, the service manual, was that there's a note about the 650 being for the Audio Club. And doing some lurking around on Audio Karma, I found that the Audio Club somehow refers to military PX stores. So I think that's where this rare faceplate variation, which is I think they call anodized bronze, comes from. Now this one I think is a little bit sun faded. I'm going to put up a picture of what it originally looked like underneath the controls. It was a little bit darker. I'm confused at the actual color of this. I thought it was more of a gunmetal. Mine's a little bit like a little bit lighter color. Very, very appealing to the eye. But anyways, that's kind of where that came from, I think, is this military PX connection where Kenwood produced a specific, exclusive faceplate just for those stores. So this is a very, very rare variation of the Model 600. Now, where Kenwood failed in many people's opinion is the marketing on the Supreme series. Brands like Sony, Pioneer, they all had nomenclature that defined the high end of their product. And Kenwood kind of dropped the ball on that. And this Supreme product is amazingly engineered. The build quality is like nothing else, yet it wasn't successful. So these kind of, got lost in time, and they're starting to come back as people realize that the build quality on this is superior, the performance is superior, and they just feel amazing to use. So that's kind of my summary of what the Supreme series is all about. I hope I didn't make too many mistakes. Again, if I got anything wrong or you have additional info, please message in the comments section. Let's take a closer look at the front panel of the Model 650. So we're going to start out with power. Engage that. I've got an indicator light here and then a relay click. The relay there just indicates that the power on delay has completed and there's nothing wrong in the power amplifier stage, DC offset or anything like that. So once that relay clicks, the power amplifier is linked to the speakers on the back. This indicator is normally incandescent. I've converted this one to LED. I went through a few different colors and decided on green was going to be the best fit for this faceplate. Speaker selector up here, we can hook 3 sets of speakers up to this unit. You can select A, B, or C alone, or combine A plus B. There's no A plus C, which is common on a lot of other models. Let's get some audio going through this thing. We're going to start on the phono input, and I'm going to put on some music from my friend Bruce's band in Portland, Young Elk. I'm going to link them in the description if you want to check that out. So first off, we've got this big volume control. All the knobs on this thing are solid aluminum with set screws. So there's no plastic inserts in these to cheapen it up. This is obviously was a top of the line piece, and they didn't really cut corners on it. And that goes for these controls as well. They're not solid. There's an insert in there so that they can stick onto the switch cover. But this is all metal controls in here. All right, so we got our volume adjustment here. Now this volume control has a little ball inside of it that gives it detents. So from the factory, this would have gone click, 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 but sometimes that ball function can fail and you'll lose the clicks. So this one right now is silky smooth, and some people prefer that even, and I'm going to leave this one like that. You can get into the control and repair it, but as you'll see when we go inside of the unit, this is a giant control, and it's kind of a hassle to take it apart. It is possible, but a lot of people do like it with the smooth action, so I'm going to leave that one this way. Now, what can happen in a detented volume control is as you're changing the volume, you might find that your ideal listening level is in between 2 of the clicks. So that's why having this smooth operation is kind of nice. It gives you a little bit more granularity. If you do have a detented control and you find yourself in that situation, you can always use the attenuator switch here. So this just dropped the signal 15 dB and I get a lot more range. And I can do that as well at the negative 30 dB. Let's bring that back down. Balance. This is this section here. There's a detent in the middle. So that's hard left. Get a click here. That's centered. And full right. And I gotta say, this thing is just luxurious to interact with. One of my requirements for a piece of stereo equipment that I want to buy and keep for myself is I have to like how it feels. I don't like plasticky feeling controls and things that don't feel nice when you rotate them. This just screams quality when you touch it, which is for me, that's a big part of owning a piece of stereo equipment. All right, so let's go over some of the EQ stuff. So you can defeat all of the EQ in this thing, which is great. So you can run it completely flat if that's your preference, but if you do need to color your signal a little bit, we have 2 turnover frequencies for the low frequency, so I can go to 400 Hertz, and then we activate this control to change the bass there. And I can move it up to 100 or down to 150 Hertz for a little bit more accurate low end, super low end adjustment there. We can change between 3 kilohertz and 6 kilohertz for the treble. Now these are concentric controls, so I can change one channel different from the other. But because of the actual mechanical resistance with the control, when you grab it, both will spin together. The filters here, this is kind of cool what they did with the buttons. These are spring loaded, so when you push them, it comes back out to the same position. So the faceplate is always looking in kind of this uniform way without buttons being one stuck in and one out. Now what that does is to feel if it's engaged or not, you have to slightly depress the button. And right now I can feel that switch is back. I do this, the pressure stops there. So right now both my filters are out. This is at 40 Hertz. This is for low frequency noises and things that you might get from a turntable. And then the high frequency cutoff is 8 kilohertz. And these are at 12 dB per octave. So this is going to be a pretty tight slope so that we can filter out unwanted hiss and noise and stuff with that high filter if you've got some sort of noisy recording. All right, so we already went over the attenuator. The dubbing is for selecting how the tape outputs and section are going to copy to one another. Loudness, this is really cool. So with the loudness control, what they did is you can turn off the loudness adjustment, and then you're just going to be completely flat. Loudness is there to adjust for low listening level to make the sound appear more flat to your ears when you're listening at low levels. But they've given us a bunch of different options here. So for the loudness settings on 1, 2, and 3, it has a 1 hertz boost, or 100 hertz boost to the low end at 3 different dB levels. So as we build up, the bass will get more and more present there. And then the 4th position is more of your traditional loudness curve, which is a boost at 100 hertz, and then so that's 8 dB at 100 hertz and plus 3 dB at 10 kilohertz. So that boosts the highs and the lows there. So this is really cool to play around with. When I did listening on this, I always liked the loudness at 1 at the listening level that I was at. Got a mode switch here. So our options here are left, right, stereo, reverse, and L plus R. So left is both speakers playing left channel content, R both channels playing right channel content. Stereo is copying the signals that you're feeding in and setting them to left and right channel independently. Reverse just flips your left and right channel, and L plus R is the equivalent of a mono button. Left and right are combined together and set to both speakers. All right, Phono 2 gain. So what this feature does is it allows you to balance 2 turntables to one another to some degree. So you can see it doesn't go all the way down to 0. It's just, what do they give us? -6 dB and 0. So this is like coming through at full level here, and it allows us to kind of just attenuate down the turntable signal. So if you've got 2 different moving magnet turntables hooked up, you can balance their levels to one another so that when you switch between Phono 1 and Phono 2, you don't have a volume discrepancy. Also, we have a Phono impedance selector here, and this is one of the controls that is not present on a Model 500. The Model 500 has 2 adjustments, and they're located on our rear panel switch. So this one, we can load our Phono cartridge at 30K, 50K, and 100K. This is a moving magnet Phono stage. It does not work with moving coils. You would need an external moving coil head amp in order to take advantage of the Phono stage in this if you're running an MC cartridge. So for the input selection up here, it's kind of funny how it works. This is kind of like your main control here. If we're in the middle, we follow the line here and select one of these 3. So this is where we get our 2 Phono inputs and auxiliary 2. Now if I wanted to listen to auxiliary 1, I would have to put the control down here. And I think the reason they did this was for signal purity. So if you imagine back in the day, your most popular sources were probably tuner and turntable. So the signal path in here kind of skips over this control. Normally you'd have all 5 of these inputs on a rotary selector. So they've kind of made the signal path for the tape and the Phono and everything a little bit shorter. So if I go down to auxiliary 1 here, I'm just going to put some Beethoven on. Then I come up here, we'll be back on Phono. That must be in the final groove there, so I've lost my Phono content there, but and that takes care of the front panel. So next we'll spin this around and we'll look at the rear panel. Let's start on the upper left here. We've got our 2 Phono inputs. Again, these are both moving magnet. And then we have a couple ground connections here. These are tied to the same point, so don't feel like you have to plug Phono 1 in here, Phono 2 in here. Just use whichever is the correct length for the turntable that you've got. Tuner, aux 1 and aux 2. We've got a couple tape inputs down here. We've got RCA in and out for play and record, and then also a DIN connection for a 1-wire connection to your tape deck. Here we have the pre-out main in section. This is what links the preamp section in the front to the power amp section in the rear. Now, traditionally, you wouldn't have a switch like this. There would just be like a metal U-shaped jumper that goes between these 2 sections. But what they did here is they gave us a switch that's normal, which basically simulates us putting in a jumper, and separate, where these jacks function in their normal sense. Now, if you have a 650 and you're losing 1 channel on the output, take a look at the switch. It may just be dirty and you might have an issue getting your power amp and your preamp linked together. There's a little plastic retainer clip here, so if I was going to switch this in the separate position, that would allow me to use a different preamp and use the power amp of the 650. So to do that, I'd unscrew this little clip, flip over the switch, and then screw the clip back in that position. And that's kind of the same operation over here for the voltage selection. So some of the 500, 600, and 650s came with power transformers with multiple primaries, allowing you to use different voltages for different parts of the world. So this unit has the ability to adjust for either the 110 to 120 volt range. Since this has a regulated power supply for some of the circuitry, you can be a little bit flexible with the input power on this thing. So they don't say it's got to operate right at 120. They gave us a 10 volt range here, and then also 230 to 240. There's two switches here because this is a dual mono design. There's a power transformer here and a power transformer here. So in order to do this, you have to switch both of them over. Otherwise, it's not going to work properly. I've got this one configured for 240 volt operation because I'm shipping this to the UK, to one of my buddies over there. So I'm testing on a step-up transformer at the moment. We've got a set of convenience outlets here, unswitched. That means whenever this cable has power, this outlet will also have power. And then these are controlled simultaneously with the front panel switch. We've got our speaker connections here, A, B, and C. This is kind of a weird binding post configuration, and sometimes you'll see that people have converted this to five-way binding posts for banana jacks. That's okay. I like to keep these things original. This piece definitely has some historical significance, so I'd rather keep that original and adapt the cable. So these are meant for bare wire. You can feed them in from either the top or the bottom. This looks like it could take a banana, but it can't. It's there's a screw that bottoms out in there, so you cannot plug banana jacks into this stock. You can do a spade if you bring the top two sections of the spade into the connector here. I've had the most luck just feeding either like a push pin connector or bare wire into this. You can always tin the end of a bare wire with some solder to get it to go in there nice. So that takes care of the back panel. Next we'll jump in and see what this thing looks like on the inside. So the inside of the 650 is pretty impressive. This whole section up here is the preamp, and it's physically separated from the power supply electronics and the power amplifier. At the bottom down here we can see the Alps volume and balance control. It's about this deep, and it includes the balance function and then a dual control for the left and the right channel. Now what it does is it adjusts the volume as it comes into the input of the preamp, also as it leaves the preamp stage. So it controls the volume in two different spots simultaneously. And they claim that this improves dynamic range and signal to noise ratio. Again, the front end is all completely a FET design. This has been completely restored, all new electrolytics, some film caps have been upgraded. What else? I did the LED modification, the amplifier and power supply are completely rebuilt. We've got new capacitors here. This, you'll see everything is basically mirrored. So we have power transformer for the left channel, power transformer for the right channel, independent main filter banks for each of the two channels. I'm going to pull out this power supply card. This is completely symmetrical. So this is a regulated power supply with multiple regulated voltages. And this is card based, which is really nice. This thing's both easy and hard to service. It's easy to service the power supply. It's not so easy to service the power amplifier. So here's our rebuilt power supply card, and you can see we've got one channel here and one channel here. Everything is symmetrical. So we have independent plus and minus regulated voltages for each channel. The other card over here has the rectifiers for the power supplies and the protection relay for the speakers. Let's stick this guy back in here. Really high quality gold plated connectors on here as well. The power amp sections are on the left and right of this chassis. They use a very specific Sony integrated circuit. It's a dual low noise N-channel FET. Also with the power amplifier sections, I replaced some signal transistors that are known to go bad. This channel was completely dead when I got the unit. Luckily all the output transistors were good, so I got to save the original Sanken devices, put some fresh thermal compound on those during the rebuild. Got some new Borns trimmers for the coarse and fine DC offset adjustment and the bias. And speaker protection relay was replaced. Basically the whole works. This was a complete top to bottom restoration, so the entire thing was disassembled and rebuilt and put back together. This piece was really in rough shape when it came to me, but I'm very glad that I went through and did the whole restoration. These 500, 600s, and 650s are some of the best integrateds that Kenwood ever made. And that's about it for the 650. If you liked this video and want to see more, please subscribe to my channel. There'll be plenty more to come. Thanks for watching. See you next time.